Okay, so we're going to deep dive into some recent events down in Florida.
Right.
We're talking about ICE raids.
Yeah.
And we came across this CBS News article that
Huh.
really caught our attention.
Mm.
It focuses on this Miami man whose wife was recently detained in one of these raids.
Oh, wow.
And the thing that kind of struck us right away
Yeah.
was the language that he used.
Yeah.
He said that she was snatched.
Right.
And I think that term really just kind of captures
The rawness.
the raw emotion. Yeah.
Absolutely. And, I think that word snatched really speaks to the climate of fear
Yeah.
that these communities are experiencing right now,
Definitely.
especially those that have been targeted by these ICE raids.
Right. And for anyone who's
Yeah.
familiar with Florida's history, this probably feels a little
Oh, yeah.
like deja vu.
Absolutely. We've seen this before, periods of heightened ICE activity,
Right.
particularly in South Florida.
Exactly. So this isn't completely uncharted territory. But
Yeah.
this time around,
Mm.
what is it about this particular story,
Mm-hmm.
this particular situation in Miami that kind of stood out to you?
Well, I think what's really interesting about the story is the fact that, this man is claiming that his wife was just apprehended at their local grocery store.
Right.
And that brings up
Yeah.
some very interesting questions about,
Well, and it makes you wonder, like,
yeah,
is a grocery store even considered like a fair game location?
right. Like, where can IC
Uh-huh.
actually detain people?
Right. What are the legal boundaries there?
Well, so the legal framework surrounding this is complex.
Okay.
But generally speaking, IC typically needs a warrant to enter a private residence.
Okay.
But public spaces, like a
Mhm.
grocery store,
Right.
are generally considered fair game.
Okay.
However, even then, there are rules of engagement
Okay.
that IC officers are supposed to follow.
Right.
So, for instance, they can't use excessive force.
Right.
They can't engage in racial profiling.
So it sounds like there's a lot of
That's
room for
true.
interpretation
Absolutely.
and potentially for abuse of power.
You got it. And that's why these cases, these stories like this one,
Right.
highlighted in the CBS article,
Yeah.
are so important
Okay.
because they force us to really examine
Yeah.
the finer points of the law
Mm-hmm.
and to ask some tough questions about, due process
Right.
and the potential for overreach by law enforcement agencies like ICE.
And you mentioned something earlier
Yeah.
about the impact that these situations have on families.
Yes, absolutely.
And I mean, reading through this article, it
Yeah.
paints a very heartbreaking picture
Yes.
of this man trying to navigate the system,
Yeah.
trying to get information about his wife's whereabouts.
Right.
What happens to families, when these situations occur?
Right. Well, unfortunately, the ripple effects on families can be
Yeah.
devastating.
Okay.
In many cases, these detentions lead to prolonged family separation,
Right.
financial hardship,
Mm-hmm.
and, psychological trauma,
Yeah.
particularly for children.
Yeah.
Thankfully, there are advocacy groups out there like the Florida Immigrant Coalition.
Yeah.
They're working tirelessly to provide legal aid
Right. Good.
and support services and to really be a voice for these families.
That's good.
But their resources are often stretched thin.
Yeah.
It's a really challenging situation.
It's a very complex issue,
Absolutely.
and it seems like it's multifaceted with really no easy solutions.
You got it.
And I think it's important to note that we've got legal intricacies here.
Mm-hmm.
We've got human rights concerns that we have to consider.
Yes.
And then we have the socioeconomic implications for Florida as a whole.
Absolutely. And I think it's really those long-term implications that we need to be thinking about.
Yeah.
Will this renewed focus on South Florida
Right.
deter some undocumented immigration in the short term? Okay.
Sure, maybe.
Yeah.
But will it really address those underlying issues
Right.
driving migration in the first place?
Right.
Or will this just end up pushing people further into the shadows?
That's a great question. And I think it's one that we all need to be considering
Absolutely.
as we move forward. And as always, we encourage you to continue exploring this topic.
Mm.
Dig a little deeper
Yeah.
into the legal precedents,
Absolutely.
into the arguments for and against these raids, and most importantly, into the lived experiences
Yes.
of those who are directly affected by
Absolutely.
these events.
Important to hear those stories.
It is. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive,
Thank you.
and we'll see you next time.
Sounds good.